Our class for today deals with a very relevant issue, which is the role and the specificity of international human resource management. This topic originated in the 60s and 70s when global companies started to emerge. And they were faced with the issue of deciding how to manage people. And it's grown today to be one of the major issues that most companies deal with since the degree to which globalization has occurred is incredible today. So we will deal with international human resource management by first understanding some of the differences and then moving into developing a sounder knowledge of a couple of aspects like recruitment of candidates for expatriation and also repatriation and integration of employees. So before we get into HR, though, it's important for you to consider that there are several different ways in which companies can deal with being international. And usually we define them on the basis of two variables: local responsiveness, to what extent they want to be locally, let's say, adapted, and global efficiency, which means to what extent they want to take advantage of synergies, therefore, unifying activities in headquarters and avoiding duplications. So we have four possible strategies to be international. The first one is international. Basically means low local responsiveness and low efficiency. A company which starts to operate in a couple of new countries, clearly there will be redundancies and the ability to be locally responsive will be quite limited. As the company grows, the number of countries that it operates into, and when it's just operating locally, without, let's say, any search of global efficiency, it becomes a multinational with higher local responsiveness and low global efficiency. The other possible strategy is to become global, which means, let's say, reducing the local activities to the essential and trying to gain the maximum efficiencies by our global operation. And then we have transnational, which in a sense is the so-called local, both global and local, trying to take advantage of both. It's difficult to say which example we could have today. Many companies are moving into being either global or transnational. But we can think of what used to be a global company, that was Apple, before it decided to open the retail stores, and then it moved into being transnational as the way it is today. As for multinational, probably still some automotive industry, some automotive companies are like that. They're not yet really developed into transnational, like big companies like GE, Shell, or companies like those. So what are the major complications for international human resources management compared to HRM? Basically, there's much more to be known, like cultures, levels of development, legal systems, which affect the way in which we hire, pay, develop people. Three of the major issues are the decision as to whether we are moving managers from the home country of our company to the host countries, or we are using a different approach. And we'll discuss this later on. Another issue is training and development, which becomes completely different for companies which are operating globally and internationally, and also compensation, which needs to meet the local standards. Let's see more in detail the differences in terms of content, if not in terms of complexity. So there are more different business activities in HRM, like taxation, relocation, remuneration, cross-cultural training, repatriation, new activities compared to those that you perform in a regular HRM function. Other complexities like, the fluctuations of currencies, which make our salary quite difficult to manage, different labor laws locally. When you are running on expatriates, you end up having more responsibility and being more involved in their life, their peers, their kids, because you're moving entire families abroad, and that's not so easy to manage. The employee mix is different. You have people with high diversity in terms of cultural, political, religious background, and therefore it can be hard at times to let them get along. And the HR is in charge of making it happen. More risks, particularly when you're operating in countries that are more complex to manage and less, less stable politically. Other challenges, the high failure rates of expatriation and repatriation. We know that despite the efforts the company put into that, expatriating and repatriating managers can be extremely complex and difficult for several reasons that we will discuss later on in this class. Another issue is deploying. How do we manage the growth and the deployment of a global workforce? Running HRM in a global company means also that you will have some difficulties in making sure that local and regional HR are responding to your requests, so you're going to go through a lot of complexities in doing so, and the information will be moving around less rapidly. Moreover, if you're running a global company, talent identification development is difficult. You need to find people who are ready to travel, know several languages, are very flexible. And also you need to consider many barriers that you find to women, but not only to women, also to other minorities or, let's say, people who are considered locally different from others, which might see their career not to develop because of external constraints that the company has to deal with. And also running HR globally means having to deal with international ethics. So how do you respond to some requests of local government? How are you dealing with those? Are they consistent with your ethics or not? Are they respectful? So that's a very difficult and tough issue. Not, let's say, forgetting the baseline, which is language. And, in a global company, there's a need of finding common ground in terms of language we speak, and this can lead to much complexity for companies. Continuing in the terms of the main challenges, we have different labor laws, different political climate, different stages of technological advancement, different values, attitudes in the workforce, different roles, and holidays, and also the educational level attained. So there are many differences in all of that, and also in the external context. So being an HR in different countries can mean taking on completely different roles. So that's the whereabouts of international human resources management. It's highly complex, difficult, therefore people who develop their skills in this area are of high value and highly requested on the job market, but it takes time. And it takes a constant involvement in learning about changes occurring not only globally, but even locally. And we see how this leads to other changes within HR in the next part.